Welcome to another episode of Debating is for Life. With me today,
Hello,
Megan Campbell.
hello, hello. Excited to be here. Very excited.
I'm thrilled to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then I'll fill in some details on the side whenever necessary.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm very, very excited to be here. So my name is Megan Campbell. I'm a fourth year student at the University of Toronto, and I've been working with Tamer for 3 years now at Debating Edge, where I coach level 4 in debating. Big debating fan to the core. In high school, I did quite a bit of debating. I was the junior national champion, the under 16 international champion, and eventually the world champion in 2018. And since then, I've been coaching, talking with kids about debating, debate counseling, uh, debate of all sorts. And yeah, I'm excited to
I
talk about
know.
it today.
I realize that for you, debating really is for life. Like you're one of those
Yeah.
people who's made debating your thing. And I try to explain that to my students that for some people, believe it or not, debating, they live, eat, and breathe debating. It's one of those things that gets in your blood. You were the 2018 high school world champion, and you
Mhm.
accomplished that in South Africa at the international. What is it called, that tournament?
That is called the World Individual Debating and Public Speaking Championship.
You did it in grade 11, which was an
Mhm.
amazing accomplishment because it's a high school championship, and it's as a high school teacher or former high school teacher, I know that a lot happens between grade 11 and grade 12 intellectually. So
True.
you were facing people from grade 12 when you were in grade 11. How did you feel when you realized you were the world speaking champion? I mean, just to become the world champion at anything must be amazing, but to be the best speaker in the world, that must have boosted you beyond anything imaginable. How did that feel? So,
It's true. It was very, very exciting. And it's going to sound like a cliche, but I was just truly very, very excited to be there. It was such a fun experience to be in an environment where everyone is so interested in the same things and to have the opportunity to meet not just, people from your city who are interested in the same thing, not just people from your province who are interested in the same thing, but to meet people who, exactly like you said, eat, slept, breathed debating from all over the world, and to get to learn from them was, a really exciting experience. And to get to, participate in the tournament in the first part, but also to get to participate in the finals, it was so exciting at the time.
well, I had an amazing opportunity to debate against you, and it
This
was,
is true.
I think, what was the day? A little while ago. We
Mm-hmm.
debated about COVID, and I partnered with my former captain of my team, Sterling, who you know very well.
Yes.
And you debated with your brother as your partner. And so
Yes.
what people ought to know is that not only were you world champion debater, but your brother also was a world champion, no less two-time world champion before you. And so
Yes.
how is it that two kids from the same household and it can become world champions? And I know how hard it is just to win a tournament in debating, but to rise to the level where you can become provincial champion, national champion, win all the tournaments, and then win the world championship, it's nothing short of a miracle as far as I'm concerned. But in your household, this miracle has happened 3 times. So can you give some kind of explanation?
Not really. Not really. I would say I learned a lot of my debating from Connor, because I'm 6 years younger, and so all the time that he was in high school, I was taken to the tournaments to sit there on weekends, kind of be babysat by the debate tournament. And so you get excited, you get into it, you say, oh, I want to do this someday. And so I feel that I learned a lot from him kind of going into it. And some of it I do think is just, luck in that particular tournament as well. It's not to say that there's, not a lot of preparation and practice and all of that that goes into it, but really in those tournaments, you look at the people who come like in the top 5, in the top 10 on a regular basis, and you know that kind of once you're in that bracket, it could be anybody's day. And so getting to the point where you kind of get to be in that little bracket, that was a lot of work. But then after that point, you got to mix that work with just a little bit of crossing your fingers,
Yeah,
hoping that you have a
I
good day, that you're on
totally
your
get it.
game, that you like the topic, all that stuff.
Yeah, that little bracket, I tell my kids, that's called the what I call the peloton, using
Yes.
a cycling metaphor. But they're all amazing, the cyclists in the Tour de France. But
Hmm.
those 8 or 10 that break away from the pack in the peloton, that's
Hmm.
where you got to live. if you
Yes.
have going to stand a chance to win tournaments or to rise to your level.
Very,
In
very
any
true.
case, we also had another debate together in which we partnered, and that
Ah,
was
yes.
amazing. And I felt so comforted knowing that the great Megan Campbell was my partner, and we went against my son Gabriel, who's also a debating coach at Debating Edge, and Sterling. But how did it feel to kind of do a debate in the metaverse? And it was actually, as far as I
Mm.
know, the very first metaverse formal debate ever. How did that feel to debate in that way? Actually, let me show a clip of you
Yeah,
debating in
yeah.
the metaverse before you talk on it.
Sure.
This was actually just the last 36 seconds of the ending of your speech, so there was no POIs, but
Ah,
so I just want people to get an idea what it's like.
oh, look at this. How cool.
They are concerned about the possibility of untrained people enforcing the law. We ask you who's enforcing the law right now, we would tell you incredibly untrained people, people who have only been in police college for a matter of weeks. And we also tell you that they are
That's me.
disproportionately of just one small group. And so we think that a much better, more well-versed group of people, simply through a facet diversity, will be better equipped to enforce the law. And then finally, they give you this idea of rule of law, that people can simply vote their way out of these problems. We tell you that this is hugely unrealistic, and frankly, if it was possible, it would have happened already. And so because we need recourse for people who don't have access to the ballot box, for people who are repeatedly barred from it, we are so very proud to propose vigilantism as the solution.
Now, I picked this clip on purpose because at the very end you said, we're so very proud to
Ah,
propose vigilantism as a solution to this problem. And
classic debate
people
line.
might not realize, but when you're debating, you don't always get to choose your side, and you don't get to speak your conscience. So oftentimes you find
No.
yourself in a position where you have to speak against your own conscience. And
Mhm.
do you really believe we'd be better off with people taking the law into their own hands?
I think I agree with everything I say up until maybe the solution. I agree that there are huge problems with the justice system right now. I believe that like changing it is really inaccessible. But is the solution to that problem vigilantism? Like maybe not. So I think that's where the best part of debating comes in, when you're given a topic that maybe you don't agree with, but you find along the way that for a lot of the analysis you agree with, and then maybe you just get off at the end and you think that, maybe we should have turned left instead of turning right towards vigilantism.
But how do you square that? How do you speak with equal skill and composure and passion when you're actually speaking against your own conscience? Like, how do you square that in your own mind when you're doing it?
I think it's a few things. I think part of it is a little bit of putting on a character. It's sort of like being in a play or doing a piece of theater. Um, on the other hand, though, I think that debating really is an exercise in empathy and trying to see what it would be like to argue from that other position. And oftentimes, I think you do find that even if you don't agree with the arguments being raised on that side, there can be a lot of overlap. So, in a debate like vigilantism, uh, do I think that we should have people running around the streets enforcing the law by themselves? Maybe not. But if someone really did believe that and they raised the critique with me that the reason that we need vigilantism is because the justice system isn't doing its job right now, I could say, I absolutely agree with that. Actually, I think that's very true. And we can make that argument together. And so we can both argue that there are huge flaws with the justice system. And then when it comes time to argue our own positions, then maybe we differ a little bit. But I think you find that a lot of the analysis, even in arguments for a side that you really don't agree with, oftentimes there's a lot in common.
I remember you said that growing up in your household, you guys debated about everything, like who's going to turn on the dishwasher.
Of
Is
course.
that true?
Yes, 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 yes. It's very true. And, I think every household looks at themselves and like, well, we did too. We would do battle over the dishes, we'd do battle over the laundry, all that stuff. But it's like Debating Edge teaches, there's a difference between being an arguer and being a debater. And I feel very lucky that it was a debating household and not an arguing household, because you get some structure and you are articulating your position with respect. And so, as much as possible, you try to communicate in a way that's organized, in a way that's well thought. You're not speaking from emotion, but maybe not emotion about the dishwasher, but you know what I mean. That when you do have a case that you want to make, you can make it really consistently and really clearly.
And where are you right now in your life? What are you doing, and what are your plans for the future?
Yeah. So I'm in fourth year university right now. I'm finishing up my last semester at U of T, and it is big decision time for where I'm going to be going next year for school. Right now, I'm deciding between three programs. I'm looking at law school at U of T, law school at McGill, and a human rights and humanitarian action master's at Sciences Po. And at this particular moment, I think I'm kind of leaning towards McGill. Um, they have a good French influence, which I really appreciate. I've tried to keep up with both languages, and they teach both legal systems that exist in Canada, and so I think it would be interesting to have that kind of dual perspective. But they're all great schools. Sterling, who also teaches at Debating Edge, is at U of T for law right now, so we can see that there's definitely like a law influence
Oh, sure.
going
Oh,
on
sure.
here.
Well, any one of those programs will be lucky to have you
Well,
as an
thank you.
ambassador. I'm really your number one fan. I don't know if you realize it, but I can't say enough good things about you. I'm so
That's so
proud
sweet.
of
Thank you.
you, and I'm so happy to have you as a guest here. One more question before we start our rhetorical activities.
Sure.
You've been teaching at Debating Edge for a long time now,
Mhm.
and I want to know how what how did you make that transition? How was it for you to go from being a really effective and successful public speaker, debater, to actually teaching public speaking and debating? Was that a natural transition, or did something surprise you in that process?
That's a good question. I don't think that it happened all at once. I'd had a few opportunities where I'd sort of gotten to work with newer debaters or newer students along the way. So whether that was, in my debate club in high school, where you would sort of help out newer debaters, or I had worked as a debate camp counselor for a little while, even though that was more camp counselor than debate. But at Debating Edge, this really is the focus. We're like just teaching debating. And so it was definitely a bigger step, but I love teaching debating. I think it's the best. I think kids, you learn so much from them because they don't have those limits on their brain of the kinds of arguments that, adults will make. We're so used to hearing the same arguments over and over again. But kids, when they're introduced to these topics for the first time, there are no constraints. They're so creative. And so I think seeing the ways that their little brains work and coming up with arguments is brilliant.
Yeah, there's always
Yeah.
some surprises every day what
Oh,
kids come up
yeah.
with. Okay, let's get started. You ready?
I'm ready.